Hey, shalom, shalom, Mr. Picard.
Shalom, shalom.
Welcome again, welcome again. It's a pleasure being back and seeing the beautiful Mr. Picard once again as we try to get a nice understanding on tonight's lesson, If Words Could Kill Part 2. All right? If Words Can Kill Part 2. Anybody have any testimonies they would like to share with the congregation on how the Father's been baruching you, blessing you throughout the week? Anything anybody have waking you up this morning with life, health, and strength, working in all faculties, sight, smell, taste, hearing, all these great things that the Father has given us, and not everybody is always able to wake up with those things. So I would just like to give the Father all the praise and honor for all the great things that He's been doing for me and my personal family, and I pray that the Father is also doing the same to everybody's family here at the congregation of Yashra'al. Okay, if there's nothing else, we're going to go ahead. We have any announcements, anything like that? We're just dedicating that to the Saturday classes. Oh, okay, got you. All right, got you. All right, so without further ado, what we'll do is that we'll stand up, face to east. We have our Chief Zakein to blow the shofar 7 times. And then after that, we'll read the 10 Commandments. And we'll go ahead and get classes started for tonight.
I thought the renewed covenant is first.
Okay, the renewed covenant, right. The renewed covenant, we'll do that. And then we do the 10 Commandments and Aaron's blessings at the end. Jeremiah, the 31st chapter, verses 31 to 33. Behold, the days come, says Yahuwah, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Yashra'al and the house of Yehudah, not according to the covenant that I made your fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was a husband unto them, says Yahuwah. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Yashra'al after those days, says Yahuwah. I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Hallelujah. The 10 Commandments, the 10 Devarim, Exodus the 20th chapter. And Yahuwah spoke all these words, saying, I am Yahuwah thy Elohim, which I brought thee out of the land of Mizraim, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other Elohim before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I am thy sovereign, thy Elohim, and the jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that hurt me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of Yahuwah thy Elohim in vain, for Yahuwah will not hold him guiltless that take his name in vain. Remember the Shabbat day, to keep it set apart. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Shabbat of Yahuwah thy Elohim. In it thou shalt do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, open thy gates. For in 6 days Yahuwah made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore Yahuwah blessed the Sabbath day and made it set apart. Honor thy father and thy mother, that the days may be long upon the land which Yahuwah thy Elohim giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
We never did pray.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Yeah, we did pray. So we're going to stand up and pray. Our Father which art in heaven, set apart be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from all that is evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and all esteem belongs to the Father. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Right. Okay, the title of tonight's class is called If Words Could Kill. Also, I wanted to subtitle this Know Thyself, which is going to be very, very important. So if words can kill, know thyself. And before we get started, we want to make sure that we give all peace and blessings, Mishpachah, as always, to the Father for his esteem, that he's always showing the 12 tribes of Israel, his love, his mercy, his everlasting compassion that he has for his people, the 12 tribes of Israel, his bride to be. And that's very, very important, that we always understand that we must always give esteem to the Father. And that's all esteem, acknowledging his love, acknowledging his mercy, and his everlasting compassion for his bride to be. And the reason why I have bride to be, because I believe that Moreh did a very good job last week in sharing with the Mishpachah on where we're at now with the covenants, and understanding that we're not rehearsing the righteous acts. It's important for us to understand that the renewed covenant has not taken place yet. We have not sat down and had that marriage supper with the groom yet. So these are all rehearsals. We are now engaged to the Mashiach, and we must make sure that we all are ready for that wedding that is soon to take place. Now, there's been a couple of things that's been happening, all right? We want to try to address a couple of things. Everybody's talking about the 400-year captivity is up. I'm a little bit more concentrating on the Jubilee and what the Jubilee actually means, all right? Because we have to understand the pattern that the Father has been showing us. And every time Israel was in a major captivity, the Babylonian captivity, and we look at when Israel was delivered from Egypt, all of that took place during a Jubilee. So the Jubilees are extremely, extremely important. We also talked about a couple of weeks ago what was going on in Revelations. We talked about redemption. We talked about the plagues that's going to be coming here to not just America, but the whole planet Earth. And what we did was we decided to slow down a little bit on that, because I wanted to make sure that everybody understood commitment. Commitment is very, very important. Everybody's talking about coming together and living together, having everything in common. But I want everybody to understand I am solely 100% for that. But we have to also remember that the people that was living during the time of the Exodus are still here today. And so when we talk about living together, we must make sure that we understand exactly what that means. And a lot of times we kind of like skip that part. We all excited, the 400 years and coming together and all of that good stuff there. But it's going to take a real commitment. And again, everybody has their own personality and their own characteristics and whatever it is that makes them up. And what goes on in one man's house might not go in another man's house. So we have to always be mindful and respectful on each other's nature or each other's character is what we want to talk about tonight.
This commitment about living together and coming together as a mishpachah and getting land and things like that, this is a marriage. This is a commitment. Meaning now that when the Father sets us up to be able to do something like that, this is not something that you can wake up one morning and say, listen, you know what, I don't want to be part of the community anymore, and I'm just going to take my stuff and leave. Because that is happening a lot in some congregations, and you don't need to make mentions of that. Because what's happening now is that, again, they're all focusing on the idea of living together, but they're forgetting now everybody has a personality. And this is not something that we can all come together with, and then one day you say, listen, I don't want to do it anymore. When we live together as a community, this is a marriage. The same type of marriage that you might have with your Isha. Just how things are supposed to be in one accord there, it has to also be like that when you're living together as a community. There's been reports of people coming together and not getting along. And this is the problem. These people now have acres and acres of land. I'm talking about 40 to 50 acres of land. And everybody came together with the understanding that we're going to do this thing as a family. But things happen. I don't like you. You said this to me. I really didn't like you anyway. And so now this puts a burden on the rest of the mishpachah because this person now took all of their belongings and no longer want to be part of the community. And now we have situations where property now is now in jeopardy, where now one person, because of whatever it might be going on in that particular congregation or people that have gotten together to get this land, this now puts everything now in jeopardy because we just can't get along. Just like Zabud and I have talked a couple of days ago, how is it that Israel, seeing all of the great miracles that the Father has showed them, and I hate saying them, and I'll get into that a little bit later, and then turn back around and go back into the things that they were involved with in Egypt. But I'm here to share with everybody here, this is just my own personal beliefs. Just like the scripture says, it is once for man to live and die. I agree with that totally. But there's something else that's going on here. Everybody here has a physical body. I'm talking about now the spirit now that is actually activating or animating that body there. I can see the physical you, okay, but what's actually happening now behind the scenes or within inside of that body there? Scriptures talk about, for example, Yehochanan has come. Elijah has come. And then the Talmudim are asking the Mashiach, well, what are you talking about? Then they understood that he was talking about John the Baptist. Me personally, I believe that we all been here before. All been here before. The body dies, but the spirit now goes back to the Father, and then what happens to that spirit? We have the Mashiach. Everybody understands, those of us that believe, the congregation of Yashra'al, we believe that the Mary, she birthed the Mashiach. But this is the thing. The Mashiach existed before Mary. So how now did Mary birth the Mashiach, as if the Mashiach never existed? The scriptures also talk about when the Mashiach is talking to his Talmudim, he said, in the regeneration, you will also sit with me judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So how is that going to take place? So when I read the scriptures, I don't read the scriptures as they. I read it as that same spirit is here today. And we're going to have problems if we're not able to come full and center with what's actually going on behind closed doors. I'm talking about the spirit that's within inside of all of us. So before we get into, we're going to tackle that. That's going to be the main thing that we're going to be talking about tonight. But I also want to talk about another thing that has also come up within inside of the congregation of Yashra'al, not in the congregation of Yashra'al, but within inside of the Israelite nation, is the Mashiach. Those that believe in the Torah, those that believe in the Torah and the New Testament, and those that just believe in the New Testament. We want to go to the book of Yashra'al. We have 3 quick verses or chapters we want to go over right quick and try to share with everybody why we believe in the Mashiach. We're going to go to the book of Yashra'al. If we can get a nice strong reader, let's get, Zakane, if you can do that for me, please. 53. Yashra'al, the book of Isaiah, the 53rd chapter. Then we'll start at the first verse all the way down to 12. And to me, it's self-explanatory. So you just tell me who you believe that it might be. Isaiah, the 53rd chapter, verse 1.
Yeshayahu or Isaiah 53 verse 1. Who have believed our report? And to whom is the arm of Yahuwah revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He hath no form, no comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid it as it were our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of Elohim, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and Yahuwah have laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shears is dumb, so he openeth not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people was he stricken. And he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased Yahuwah to bruise him. He hath put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of Yahuwah shall prosper in his hand. He shall see of the travail. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his sword, his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bare the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors.
Hallelujah. Looking at Isaiah, the 53rd chapter, you read verses 1 through 12. Do anybody know who this might be referring to? There's some that's saying that this is referring to Israel. I didn't see it. I really didn't see it. So again, maybe it comes with proper overstanding or proper reading, but this is clearly, for me, speaking about Yahushua HaMashiach, who the Father sent, and he talks about who has believed our report. And especially when he begins to talk about he has laid upon him the sins of the nation of Yashra'al, and he's actually bearing the sins of the nation of Yashra'al. So again, this is what I'm coming up with, and I'm glad that everybody here is able to make that conscious decision to see that this is actually referring to Yahushua HaMashiach. The book of Isaiah, the 11th chapter, verse 1. And if we can have Zakane to read that also, we're going to have him read down to verse 1 to verse 4. Just verse 4. 5, excuse me, just verse 5. 1 to 5.
Yashra'al or Isaiah 11 verse 1. And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And the ruach of Elohim shall rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the ruach of counsel and might, the ruach of knowledge and of the fear of Yahuwah, and shall make him a quick understanding in the fear of Yahuwah, and he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ears. But with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his reins.
Hallelujah. So again, that's another scripture that I constantly use to actually show and prove that this is actually referring to the Mashiach. So we just share with we're sharing here tonight to those on Facebook and those on YouTube that these are the verses, some of the verses are out of many that is showing clearly for us that this is referring to Yahusha and the Mashiach. After we went to 2, we're going to go to the book of Psalms, the 40th chapter, verses 6 through 7. 6 through 7. Excuse me, 40th chapter, verse 6. Just the 6 and 7. We'll do that. But we're going to read it now from the Greek Septuagint, where it says, "Sacrifice and offerings thou wouldest not, but a body hast thou prepared me. Hold burnt offering and sacrifice for sin that thou didst not require." And then it shares, "But then I said, Behold, I come in the volume of the book. It is written concerning me." So that is very important that we get a proper understanding or understanding of the scriptures on why we're saying the things that we're saying. The Father sent his Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, to be that atoning sacrifice for the nation of Yashra'al. That is very, very important for us to understand. So when we come together, because like Moreh has been saying, I've been saying, when we look at the first 5 books, especially the first 5 books, those are all instructions on how we're supposed to live as a community. And if we can't do that, if we can't come to the full understanding of that, we're going to be wasting our time, and we don't want to be in a situation as it has in the book of Acts, because this takes commitment. Let me just find that right quick. The book of Acts. The book of Acts. We're looking for when the Ish and Ishar lied against the set-apart spirit, and there was consequences for that. Oh wow, yeah, this is tiny. Let's see, we in chapter 5. Chapter 5, verse 1, the book of Acts. It says, "But a certain man named Ananias, with Sapphira, his wife, sold a possession and kept back part of the price. His wife also being privy to it, and brought a certain part and laid it at the apostles' feet. But Peter said, Ananias, why hath Satan filled thine heart to lie to the set-apart spirit, and keep back part of the price of the land? While it remained, was it not thine own? And after it was sold, was it not in thine own power? Why hast thou conceived this thing in thy heart, that thou hast lied unto men, hast not lied unto men, but unto the Father? And Ananias, hearing these words, fell down and gave up the set-apart spirit. And great fear came upon all them that heard these things. And the young men saw, arose, wound him up, and carried him out and buried him. And when it was about the space of 3 hours after, when his wife was Isha, not knowing what was done, came in, and Peter answered unto her, Tell me whether you sold the land for so much. And she said, Yea, for so much. Then Peter said unto her, How is it that you have agreed together to tempt the spirit of the rock of Elohim? Behold, the feet of them which have buried thy husband are at the door, and they shall carry thee out. Then fell she down straightforward at his feet, and yielded up the spirit of the ruach. And the young men came in and found her dead, and carried her forth, buried her by her husband. So I brought this out is because what was going on here is that we have community or collective living together. And so if it came to the point where we, or the whole agreement, where we're going to sell everything that we have, while it's yours, it is your responsibility now to be honest with the set apart or the ruach. When we talk about bringing everything to the table, everything has to be brought to the table. We have everything in common. Okay, I'm gonna leave that part out. What I'm trying to get at is this. Make sure that this is really what you want to do. Because if you lie against the set apart spirit, because you can tell us anything, but what's inside of the person is what really, really counts. And again, not everybody, unfortunately now, not everybody's built for this walk here. Because we have to be real with it. The Father told us from the very beginning how treacherous the heart is of the nation of Yashra'al. A very treacherous heart. We will say one thing and do another. And when things get kind of tough, that's when you really begin to see, as they say, people's true colors. Mishpachah, this is a very, very serious walk. A very serious walk. So just make sure that this is exactly what you want to do, because the consequences, again, can be deadly. And the reason why I'm going over this lesson here, if words can kill, and looking at the inner you, making sure that, again, this is what you want to do. We come down to the importance of names. We have the word Jacob. I'm going to write this on the board so those on Facebook and YouTube will be able to get a nice understanding of what we have going on here. This person right here is going to be very important in tonight's lesson. The word Jacob. His name is spelled in the ancient. We have the Yod, we have the Ayin, we have the Kuf, and we have the Bet. And then in the Aramaic, we have the Ayin, the Aleph, the Ain, we have the Kuf, and we have the Bet. And the Bet is like this. So the way that I'm pronouncing it, without the vowel pointing system, we have Ya. This makes an ah sound. Ah, ko, aqua, Yaqua. All right, Yaqua. This is going to be very, very important. We have the Ya. We have this word right here, qua. Very, very important. Definition of Jacob is supplanter. The importance of names. The word Jacob means supplanter. And we can go to Bereshit, the 27th chapter, verse 36. If we can have Solomon, if you can read that for us, please. The book of Bereshit, which is Genesis, the 27th chapter, verse 36. We're looking at, again, the importance of names. The name describes a person's character, and we want to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on, because we're going to go into Genesis, the 25th chapter. But for now, Genesis, the 27th chapter, verse 36.
Esau said, Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and look, now he has taken away my blessing. Then he said, have you not served a blessing for me? Have you not reserved a blessing for me?
Okay, hallelujah. So what I wanted to do now was to show that Jacob name means supplant or supplanter. All right, supplanter. What's also interesting here now is that everybody knows that Jacob's mother name is Rebekah. Rebekah, okay, am I right? Jacob means supplanter. And Rebekah name means ensnarer. And that's the Strong's number 7259. Now look at the definition that we have for her. For her, let's see here. 7259. Rebekah means ensnarer. From an unused root, probably meaning to clog by tying the flock or the fetlock. Fetting Rebah, the wife of Isaac. We're going to go now to a little bit bigger or better understanding of this definition a little bit later on, but the word ensnarer is going to be very interesting. So Jacob's mother name was Rebekah. Jacob's name means supplanter. Rebekah means ensnarer. So watch how this goes here. Genesis, the 25th chapter. If we can get Zakane to read that for us, please. And what we're going to be looking at now is the physical nature of Jacob versus the spiritual nature in us all. The physical nature in Jacob versus the spiritual nature in us all. Because before we can do anything, before we leave here, it is very important that we understand that we must learn how to live with one another. Again, coming together, getting property, having all things in common, but this thing is going to take work. Everybody, both man and woman, is going to have to put their best foot forward to make sure that this plan succeeds. Because this is about to get rough, Mishpachar. It's about to get rough. We're going to start with verse 21. So 25, 21, and I'll let you know when it stops, I can.
This is
Genesis, the 25th chapter, verse 21.
Bereshit, or Genesis 25, verse 21. And Yisak or Isaac entreated Yahuwah for his Isha, because she was barren, and Yahuwah was entreated of him, and Rebekah his Isha conceived, and the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of Yahuwah.
Okay, so verse 22, we're going to stop there for a minute. All right. This is where it's going to get interesting. Very, very interesting. It said that she was barren. All right, verse 21. Isaac entreated the father for his wife because she was barren, and Yahuwah was entreated of him, and Rebekah his Isha conceived. Read down to verse 20. You read 22 too, right?
Yep.
Okay. And the children struggled together within her, and she said, if so be, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the father. It tells us in the book of Yashra'al, when it said that she went to inquire of the father, it said that she actually went to speak with Abraham, Shem, and Eber regarding why she was going through this complication here. But what I found out here, and I'm not going to draw it on the board. I'm not going to do that. But when you look at the female reproductive organs, she has, with the fallopian tube, there's an ovum on the right side and on the left side. What I found interesting when I began to look at that, they said now that the right side is always the strongest versus the left side. I just found that interesting. And it's going to tell a whole lot here in scripture here. And I forgot to get this printed out so I can share with everybody where I'm getting my information from. For example, and I'll share this information because I found it very, very interesting when I began to look at what's going on. I'm going to save this for now. I'm going to save this. But read verse 23, and then we'll go into 23 and 24. As I can.
All right.
Watch how this plays out.
Genesis 25, verse 23. And Yahuwah said unto her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from your bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb.
Okay, stop right there. I looked up the word womb, and we have the Hebrew word batan, and it's the Strong's number 990. When I looked up that word batan, it talks about the womb and what was actually going on in the womb at this time. Now, we had talked about the right and left side fallopian tube where the ovulation actually once there's ovulation, it goes through the fallopian tubes, and we now have the ovum, or because we don't have eggs. Women don't have eggs. It's actually the ovum. That's ready for the sperm at this time. And I'm going to be reading from. It has fertility tips. It has here now. It talks about the pain and everything like that. It happens on one side of the abdomen. And it says now, when this ovulation happens now, when this ovum is right, it says that the ovum now, it alternates from cycle to cycle. This alteration happens randomly because ovulation happens on a random side each cycle. And I found that very interesting. So if you have, from my side, the right side, and then you have the left side, and the right side being the stronger side, and the left side being the weaker side. What I found interesting is that they're saying now is that this varies from month to month, where 1 month, this side will be the ovulating side. The next month, this one will be the ovulating side. And it just goes back and forth. So now I am not saying that if a child that is born from the left side is disagreeable. I'm not saying that. But I am saying in this particular situation with Jacob and Esau, is that Esau was born on the left side. Jacob was born on the right side. The reason why I say that Jacob was born on the right side, we're going to get into that a little bit later in the lesson, but it is very important for us to understand positive and negative as it even actually, as it works out even in the female anatomy. And with that too, is that the importance of the man's anatomy, where it's just inverted. It's the same thing for the most part, where you have the fallopian tubes for the women, you have the testicles for the man. You have the vast differences for the male, for the women, you have the fallopian tubes. So it's pretty much just inverted. But this is going to share a whole lot that was going on between Esau and Jacob here. Let me read this a little bit here as I can. Verse 24 says, and when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. So this is actually not, the scriptures is talking about here a lot about anatomy. So when it says that 2 nations are in their womb, this lets us know right here that these babies now are not identical twins. They're not identical twins. These are actually fraternal twins. And with that now is that, what we find interesting is that when identical twins, or when one ovum is actually fertilized by the sperm cells, but what happens now, it goes through like mitosis and things like that, when cells begin the ovum begins to split and everything like that, but it's actually still one ovum. And through the constant splitting of cells, what's happening now is that it's still considered identical. But with fraternal twins, as we have with Esau and Jacob, we have two separate ovums now being fertilized. Two separate ones. So when we have two separate ones now, this gives us now fraternal twins. And this is going to make all the difference in the world, because it said now there's two manner of people in your womb, and they should be separated from their bowels. So we know that these are fraternal twins. So what we have here now, inside of this woman, Rebecca, whose name means ensnarer, is carrying two nature or two manner of people. And what we have to figure out now, inside of this womb, because they're all being born in this one womb, what type of nature and character do we have? Do we have the characteristics of a Jacob, or do we have the characteristics of an Esau coming out of this one woman here? And how this now reflects on our lives as we interact amongst one another. Because this is going to be like one of the defining factors now on whether or not we can actually move on to the next stage. So anatomy for tonight's class is going to be very interesting here. Now, it says, in the first came I read all over like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came out his brother out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. So the word Jacob, we also have, I'm going to erase this here, because we have a couple of names here for Jacob. So far we have the word Jacob, meaning supplanter. Was anybody able to find the other name for Jacob?
You said hill catcher?
The
other one.
Right, and verse 26. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. So the definition, that the other name that we have is, you said heel catcher?
Right.
Okay. Or hand on the heel. And all of these now are going to play a very important role on the characteristics now of Jacob. Okay. Whenever we today are in complete submission, complete submission now to Torah, or Yahuwah or Yahushua, which is one and the same, meaning not because they are in one consent, this scripture is applicable to us all. The book of John, the 8th chapter, verse 44. If we can have Zabud, please, to read that. Because there are some stages that we're going to have to go through, because that dual nature exists in every last one of us. And our mission, in order to move on again to the next level, is to learn how to actually destroy that disagreeableness that's in all of us. And again, whenever we are in complete submission to the Father, this scripture here is applicable to every single last one of us, myself being first. John the 8th chapter, verse 44.
Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it.
Hallelujah. So the key thing that we see here now is that he was a murderer from the beginning, and he abode not in Torah. So in order for us now not to display the characteristics of Jacob at this point and Rebecca, is that we must make sure that we abide in Torah. Very, very important. Let's go. Okay, then we have here The very first conversational exchange or dialogue of a lie was spoken between the adversary and Adam's Isha. This is not an attack on women, okay? It is not an attack on women. But we're just trying to show here how this thing was actually manifested here on the earth. The book of Bereshit, the 3rd chapter, verse 4. The 3rd chapter, verse 1 through 4. If you can read that for me, Zabu.
Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field.
Right, subtle, the Strong's number 6175. It means shrewd, crafty, sly, sensible, prudent, passive, in a bad sense. So just looking at that definition alone, what is the first thing that comes to mind? And then just stay within the context of today's class here. He was a murderer and a liar from the beginning. We're talking about the adversary here. This word subtile, we see that is actually being played out with Rebecca and Jacob. Did anybody see that?
Yeah, does that mean like he's a trickster? Basically, he's very, very crafty and.
Exactly. We went to John 8:44. The Mashiach was actually speaking to the Pharisees and Sadducees at this time here. And so now this is now being manifested here on the earth. We have a situation now where we have Jacob and Esau and we have Rebecca. And we're going to read now a little bit more about Jacob and Rebecca because we already gave the definitions of their names. The word Jacob means supplanter and the word Rebecca means ensnarer. When we begin to look at the characteristics of the adversary, it said that he was subtile. Are you able to see now? This is the question. Are you able to see now the similarities now that Jacob and Rebecca had in comparison to the adversary? Okay, hallelujah. Read on, please.
Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which Yahuwah thy Elohim had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath Yahuwah said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Yahuwah has said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die.
Right, and so we see now this first conversation now where this disagreeableness is now being entered into the earth. We have this conversation being held with the adversary and the woman. So it is very important now that we see how this whole thing is operating because we see the same thing it's the same thing happening again all over with the conversation or the situation that's happened with Rebecca, and we're going to see that she's actually sharing with her son Jacob. It is the very same thing. Go to the book of Revelation, the 12th chapter, verse 9. If we can get Zycane to read that, please. 12 and 9.
Revelation 12, verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him.
Right. So what I'm trying to share here is that we have two natures at play here. We have the conscious being and subconscious being. We also have what we call what is agreeable and disagreeable. The disagreeable is the adversary, and call him Satan. And we have the agreeable, which is the Mashiach. These are two sons. When Adam's Isha had this conversation with the adversary, Notice that nothing happened. Nothing happened. Things began to go haywire after Adam's Isha came to him, introduced him into eating the fruit. That's when all hell broke loose. And the reason why is because we're talking about now here headship. The man is the head of the household. And so once that happened now, Adam became disagreeable. He was once agreeable. He became disagreeable. When this happened, Adam left his seat of authority. When he now is no longer sitting in his seat of authority, because the Father gave Adam the seat of authority, who was now sitting in the seat of authority? Absolutely. The earth is given over to the hands of the wicked. So there was a lot of things that happened, a whole lot of things that happened now once this was now entered back into the world. And what happens now is that our nature is so important that we have to stay agreeable. What the adversary is looking for, he's looking for a channel. He's looking for something that's within inside of all of us now to actually now interject his seed into this seed where you now have a mixture. And anytime there's a mixture, there's corruption. And when you look at the mixture and corruption, we're talking about now this duality now that's within inside of all of us. We're running on the same page here, right? Okay. Mixture, corruption, the adversary, Satan, he being cast out into the earth. He's looking now a way to now tear anything away that the Father is building. The Father gave all command and commission to Adam. When Adam now followed his Isha, because his Isha had been now seduced by the adversary, this now puts Adam in a certain situation where he no longer has dominion over the earth. If he no longer has dominion over the earth, you go to Job 9:24, the earth is given unto the hands of the wicked. It was given into the hands of the wicked because of what happened to Adam. The weaker Adam now is in place when the Father eventually, at the first point, gave him authority. And we're going to show some more on that. Okay, we just erase this here. Because what we're trying to do here tonight is make sure that we're prepared to live together as a community. That's going to be very important. Now, what does Jacob name also means in addition to deceiver, supplanter, liar, and trickster? And the clue that we have is in the name. We have the Yod, we have the Ayin, we have the Kuf, and we have the Bet. And in the modern, no, we just have it, and this is going to be our clue. This is going to be the clue here. And remember the question. What does Jacob mean? What does Jacob name also means in addition to supplanter, deceiver, trickster, etc.? And just to let you know that these are two words. This is Yah Aqua. This is one word, and this is another word. Anybody know what the word Aqua means? Because we went over in Genesis, the 26th chapter. Remember we said this word means hill? And we said that this word, Jacob, also means supplanter. And we went to the many different definitions for the word supplanter because of the struggling that was going inside of the womb of Rebecca. Well, this word Yah here, or Y-A-H, also is this letter here. This letter right here. Oh, that's Aramaic. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. This word means Yah actually has the hand on the heel of Esau. You see how I got that? No? Maybe? No? The right hand of the Father is who?
The Mashiach.
Right. And so it's actually the hand of the Mashiach that's on the heel of Esau in the womb.
Wow.
Okay, we're going to show this in scripture. The word Jacob, identifying Jacob's character in you, in me, in all of us. Jacob name means one who grabs the heel. Jacob means supplanter. Jacob's Emar, or his mother, is described as being an ensnarer. Jacob is also called a deceiver. Bereshit, the 3rd chapter, we read that. Let me just read it one more time. The 3rd chapter, verse 1. It says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which Yahuwah Elohim had made. And he said unto the woman, have Elohim said that you should not eat of every tree of the field. What we had looked at was the Strong's number 6175, and we looked at the word subtile, which means shrewd and crafty, a sly and prudent person. Now let's go to 3 and 13. Genesis 3:13. And Yahuwah Elohim said unto the woman, what is this thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent has beguiled me. The word beguile is the word nasha, which means to beguile, to deceive, utterly, to lead astray, to delude, or to seduce. That's what the word beguile means. It's a Strong's number 5377. Second of all, the dual nature of Jacob, supplanter, the definition, according to the dictionary, it means to the place of, to displace or to set aside. To take the place of by unfair methods or by treacherous methods. 3, to remove from its position, to get rid of, or to act by force. And that's when we went to the book of Bereshit, the 27th chapter, verse 36. Verse 36. And he said, it is not he rightfully named Jacob, for he has supplanted me these 2 times. First he took away my birthright, and behold, now he hath taken away my blessing. And he said, hast thou not reserved a blessing for me? We're going to read a little bit more on that. We have the book of Ezekiel, the 28th chapter, or the book of Ezekiel, the 28th chapter, verse 2. Solomon, if you can read that for us, please.
Ezekiel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 28 and 2.
22? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus, thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am Elohim, I sit in the seat of Elohim.
Wow.
In the midst of the seas, thou art a man, and not Elohim, though thou set thine heart as the heart of Elohim.
Verse 13 to 19.
Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of Elohim.
Mm-hmm.
Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, the carbuncle, and gold, the workmanship of thy tabrets, and of thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day that vast created.
Right. Anybody know who this is here?
You know what?
Anybody know who this is describing?
Oh, that's Esther Tom.
Okay, right. And he also has a breastplate, right?
Right.
Okay. So this is the adversary. This is Satan. Nakash. Read down to verse 19, please.
Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so thou wast upon the set apart mountain of Elohim.
Mm-hmm.
Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. By the multitude of thy merchandise they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as a profane out of the mountain of Elohim, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stone of fire. Thy heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. Thou hast defiled the sanctuaries by the multitude of thine iniquities, by the iniquity of the traffic. Therefore I will bring forth a fire from the midst of thee, it shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth, in the sight of all them that behold thee. All they that know thee among the people shall be astonished at thee. Thou shalt be a terror, and never shalt thou be any more.
Hallelujah. Luke, the 4th chapter, verses 1 through 8. And we'll shut it down.
Luke 4,
there.
1 through 8.
Yes.
And the Mashiach, being full of the set apart spirit, returned from the Jordan, and was led by the Ruach in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
Being 40 days tempted of Ashatan, and in those days he did eat nothing, and when they were ended, he afterward hungered. And Ashatan said unto him, If thou be the son of Elohim, command this stone that it may be made bread. And the Mashiach answered him, saying, It is written, that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word of Elohim. And Ashatan, taking him up unto a high mountain, showed him unto all the kingdoms in the world in a moment of time. And Ashatan said unto him, All this power will I give thee, and the glory of them, and the esteem of them, for that is delivered unto me, and to whomsoever I will give it. If therefore will worship me, all shall be thine. And Mashiach answered and said unto him, Get thee behind me, Ashatan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Elohim, Yahuwah thy Elohim, and him only shalt thou serve.
Hallelujah. So we have a lot that's going on here in Luke the 4th chapter, verses 1 through 8. It talks about the Mashiach being tempted by the adversary for 40 days. The 40 days represents the 40 years that Israel was tempted in the wilderness. So we see that dual nature going on in the wilderness, and even as the Mashiach was tempted in the wilderness, we see that even from the very beginning how Eve was actually tempted by the adversary. We find here with verses 1 through 8 that Eve was offered all of the things of the world, as the Mashiach here is also being offered all the things of the world. The adversary talks about in verses 1 through 8 how all these things were given unto him. And the way that these things were given unto him is because the adversary needed a portal. He needed a portal now to get into the earth, and he used Adam and his Isha, and this is how he was able now to have all of this dominion on the earth, which was at the beginning given to Adam. And Mr. Kyle, I'm going to stop there because we'll have a whole lot of material to cover. But the basis of tonight's class is this. It's making sure that everybody understands this dual nature that exists in all of us, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail next week on what's going on with Jacob, what's going on with Rebecca, what's going on even with Laban in this whole situation, and how this disagreeable nature that's within inside of all of us, we're going to have to continue to fight with this, because Scripture tells us that there's going to come a time where we're going to have to make this departure, And we really need to make sure that this is exactly what we want to do. One more scripture. I'm going to go to actually Genesis, the 4th chapter. This is Genesis, the 4th chapter. Watch how this whole thing plays out. Genesis, the 5th chapter. Watch how this is written. Genesis, the 5th chapter. It says, "This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that Elohim created man, in the likeness of Elohim made he him. Male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their names Adam." So both Adam and the woman, they were both called Adamites, both the man and the woman. "And Adam lived 130 years old, and begot a son in his own image, after his image, and called his name Seth." So we see now two phases that's going on here. When Adam was in the garden, he was in the image of the Father, which is the image of righteousness. That's how he was created. But once he was expelled from the garden because of the transgression, he now has a son with his Isha, Eve. The son now, Seth, is not created in the image or the fallen image of Adam, not in the same image that he was originally created in. So now we have this duality that's in all of us, where we have the positive side and we have the negative side. And this is the reason why I'm going to go into a little bit more detail next week, when we begin to look at even the reproductive organs in a woman, where we have the left side of the fallopian tube and the right side and the left side, where it talks about how now one son came from the right side of the fallopian tube and the other son came from the left side, because they were fraternal twins. They were not identical twins being fertilized from the same egg. All right, so Mishpachah, that's tonight's lesson, and we'll go into this a little bit more in detail next Wednesday, if it be the Father's will. All right. Are there any questions with anything?
I do. I have a question.
Sure. I love the questions.
You're saying that, okay, they're fraternal twins.
Mm-hmm.
So are you saying that fraternal twins, I'm going to use, is it, you call it an oval or?
An ovum.
Ovum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have two separate ovums, because identical twins are one.
Right.
And that split.
Right.
So,
I think it's called, they go to a phase called like mitosis. Where the eggs begin to split, because what's happening now is that the reason why there's conception, because the male and the female they're sharing genetic material. The XX chromosome being the woman, the XY chromosome being the male.
So it splits and you have to. So what I'm getting at is that with the with Jacob and Esau. You're saying one came from one side and one came from the other side?
Yeah, fraternal twins. Fraternal twins means that they're not coming from the same
side.
Right, the same ovum. Right. So one is being fertilized, or maybe that inseminated, or it came in contact with the sperm, and then the other one. Because usually what happens now is that once the ovum the sperm comes in contact with the ovum. Usually what happens now is that no other sperm cell can actually penetrate that ovum, because it becomes hard.
But what I'm trying to get at is that you're saying that one came from, instead of putting out, or do both of them put them out at the same time?
No, usually what happens is that only one ovum is fertile per month. Usually one.
So this one, you're saying one came from each side.
Right, because the word fraternal means that, we get, I forgot, dysgotic is another term that is also used. But what happened now is that, again, an identical twin. These were not identical twins because it talks about these, they're different in nature and their mannerism, their characteristics. They're two nations. Or another word for nation is ayin, the ayin, which is the these two characters here. It is and the mem sofit. This means nation. But another word for nation is kingdom. There are two kingdoms in your womb. And they should be separate from their bowels. And so if they're separated, if they're coming from one ovum, and then this ovum, because now what happens is that once the sperm cell gets inside here and it does its thing, it's like it becomes hard.
Right.
No other sperm cell cannot get in there. But what happened now was that the other ovum got inseminated also, and so this is where you have fraternal twins.
Right.
When two ovums are fertilized, one is identical.
Per month. Only one can come out per month. So
Normally,
in this particular case, both of them produce one.
Normally, yeah, because there's a lot that happens now. Because even with the when you look at, excuse my drawing, this is the ovum, and then you have like the little follicles that actually, when it comes to that point where it begins to push the egg out.
Right.
Sometimes what happens is that the egg might not all the way drop to its proper position, and then the sperm comes in contact with the ovum inside the fallopian tube, which is a problem. But now you have what's the medical term for tubular? Tubular. So that becomes a problem, and once that happens, is that that could be a major problem. So what I'm sharing here now is that there was two ovums. And I'm not saying that the adversary had intercourse with Eve. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying now is that identical twins, again, is from one ovum. If this one becomes impregnated too by the man, we now have fraternal. One is once ovum is identical, this one here would be the fraternal one. They're not the same. Yeah, so we'll go through that a lot more next week. Anything else? Yes.
I had a question concerning the names of not just Jacob, but people in the Bible as a whole. We realize that, we understand now that names are really important, which is why when we come to the truth, we have to change it.
Absolutely.
And something different. But is it that the children live up to the name, or were they like divinely given the name to match the character? For example, with Jacob, like, did y'all know from before that he was going to be a supplanter? Because I wouldn't want to name my child a supplanter.
Right.
But that is the nature of him. So was the name divinely given in the beginning, or was it just because of the character of the person, that's what it translates to? I don't know if I explained it properly.
Right. Jacob is an actual person. Jacob is also a lesson for us to learn. Okay, because we all have that Jacob nature inside of us, but there was something that Jacob needed to do in order to remove that name from off of him. And so we're going to a little bit next week when we talk about Jacob wrestling with an angel. Did Jacob actually wrestle with an angel, or was Jacob wrestling with himself with something that he needed to overcome because of what him and his mother did, and supplanting and deceiving and tricking the father Isaac? So there's something that we all have to go through in order to move to like a graduating stage where we can now be called Israel. That's the reason why each last week had asked Moreh, what does it mean when it said they're not all Israel, even though they're Israel? Some of us are Israelites, and some of us, we're all Israelites, but some of us are carrying the characteristics of Jacob. We're liars. We're deceivers. We are saying one thing, but in actuality, there's something else that's going on inside of us. And we're going to talk about that even with Esau. All right, so what I just wanted to share in the beginning, because I'm not beating up on Jacob, but there's a Jacob in every single last one of us. And if we can't conquer that, there's no way in the world that we can move on to the wedding ceremony. There's no need for us to try to get land together. There's a need for us to call ourselves a mishpachah. None of those things. Because to be in one accord, we must make sure that we understand that dual nature in every single last one of us. And if we can't conquer that, there's going to be problems in the inside of the body. There's no other way for it to work. All right, so I just wanted to also make sure that, for now, yes, we are beating up on Jacob, but the beating up on Jacob is actually the beating up of us, because Jacob had to be refined as we have to be refined. Okay, and if there's any more questions. No? Okay, hallelujah. So with that, Mr. Khan, we're in tonight's lesson, and we'll define this a little bit more next week. And then we'll eventually get back into the plagues. All right? All right, hallelujah. Yeah, this whole thing with the human genome and what's going on inside of the body and the magnificence of women becoming pregnant and going through what they're going through and understanding how, like one quick example, why did the Father give the commission that on the 8th day, after the 8th day, then the baby was allowed to be circumcised? And we know that to be important because women, they know this because at that time is when the baby starts to develop what they call vitamin K. And so once the circumcision happens now, is that at least there's enough like coagulant in the blood where now the baby can like form a scab because there was now a cutting made in the flesh. I mean, we can go through this today all night long. When you begin to look at the red blood cells and the oxygen that's in the red blood cells, you look at the white blood cells and how the white blood cells actually, they're like the soldiers. Those are the ones that fight, any type of bacteria that's inside of the body. And you begin to look at what happened with the Mashiach when he was pierced with the sword, where both blood and water came out at the same time. We're going to go through all of those things there too, because we have to understand the plasma that's also inside of the blood and how that formulates and works with the dual nature in all of us. So we're going to get into it. So, Mr. Ricard, we're going to stand up, face the east. We'll have Zakeem to blow the shofar for us 7 times. And I'll do the prayer, and that'll be it for tonight. Tonight, I pray that everybody got a full understanding of your Torah and understanding the dual nature which exists in all of us. Father, I pray that you be with us, continue to baruch us in your set-apart name through your Son, Yashra'al HaMashiach. That you continue to remember your loving, your kindness, your mercy, and your everlasting commitment that you made to the bride. It is our responsibility, Father, that we also show our love our compassion, our consistency in your Torah towards the groom, and understanding what this Last Supper means, what this supper of the marriage covenant really means, Father. I pray that everybody understands how important it is for us to come together as a mishpachah, the understanding of knowing what it means when the two sticks come together, where they will now be in one hand and it be in unison, and what the word truly means for Akkad. I pray for the brothers and sisters that were not able to make it here tonight, Father. I pray that you still continue to be that bridge for us, that hedge for us over the troubled waters, Father, that we're going to be facing very soon now. I pray for all those that are here in the congregation tonight, that you bewrote them with wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and that we always give esteem to the Father through his Son, Yashra'al HaMashiach. Father, we just ask all these things in your set-apart name through your Son, Yashra'al HaMashiach. We say hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. So we want to do the Aaron's blessing.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be done. And Yahuwah spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and to his son, saying, On this wise you shall bless the children of Yashra'al, saying unto them, Yahuwah bless thee and keep thee. Yahuwah make his face shine upon thee, and be favorable unto thee. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon thee, and give thee peace. Yahuwah, and they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Praise Yahuwah. Hallelujah. Right. And that is tonight's class, Mishpachah.